Hello, and this is The Well, where Jungian perspectives reflect on pop culture psychology. You know someone who barely speaks in real life. But online, they are talkative, humorous, and bold to a surprising degree. This is not an uncommon phenomenon, especially among those who identify as introverts. Yet when we observe this transformation, a question naturally arises. Are these individuals faking it, putting on a performance that contradicts their true nature? The answer, from a psychological perspective, is far more nuanced than simple pretense. Introverts are not pretending to be someone they are not. Rather, they are activating a different police, equally authentic dimension of their psychology, one that remains dormant in traditional face-to-face interactions. To understand this shift, we must turn to the work of Carl Jung, whose concepts of persona, shadow, and individuation provide a robust framework for explaining the digital self. Carl Jung introduced the concept of persona as the social mask we wear, the outward face we present to engage with the community around us. The persona is not inherently false. It is a functional construct, a tool for survival and adaptation in society. We adopt different personas depending on context, whether at work, at home, or among strangers. The persona helps us navigate social expectations and maintain harmony. However, Jung was clear that the persona is only one layer of the psyche, not the entirety of who we are. What becomes fascinating in the digital age is how the online persona differs from the offline one. In physical spaces, introverts may adopt a reserved, cautious persona shaped by immediate social pressures. Online, however, the architecture of digital communication allows them to craft and optimize a persona that aligns more closely with their desired self-expression. The internet becomes a studio where introverts can design their social identity with greater control and intentionality. One of the primary reasons introverts appear more extroverted online is that the internet removes many of the social energy costs that drain them in real life. Introverts are often exhausted by sensory overload, the overwhelming input of sights, sounds, and physical presence in crowded or dynamic environments. They must also process complex social cues, reading body language, tone, and facial expressions in real time, all while managing the pressure to respond immediately. These factors create a cognitive and emotional burden that depletes their energy. Online, however, these burdens are significantly reduced. Digital communication allows introverts to control the pace of interaction. They can take time to craft responses, pause conversations, or disengage without immediate social consequences. There is no need to interpret body language or maintain eye contact. The physical presence of others, which can feel invasive or demanding, is absent. The pressure of direct judgment is softened by the screen. Jung would argue that this reduction in social friction allows the persona to expand more freely, without triggering the defensive mechanisms that introverts typically employ in face-to-face settings. In other words, the digital environment creates a space where introverts can be more of themselves, not less. But there is another force at play here, one that Jung called the shadow. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves we suppress, the traits and desires we hide because they do not fit the image we want to project or the expectations others have of us. For introverts, the shadow often contains qualities that might seem contradictory to their quiet demeanor: unexpected humor, boldness, a desire for attention, rebellious opinions, and even the ability to lead and influence others. These aspects are not fake. They are real parts of the psyche that have been pushed into the background, often because the introvert has learned that expressing them in certain contexts feels risky or uncomfortable. Social media and online platforms become a safe space for the shadow to emerge. Here, introverts can be funny without worrying about awkward timing. They can express strong opinions without the fear of immediate confrontation. They can share creative work, take intellectual risks, and even command attention in ways they would never attempt offline. This is why some introverts who are silent in meetings become opinion leaders in online forums, or why someone who avoids parties might be the life of a group chat. The digital world offers a low-stakes arena where the shadow can be integrated into self-expression, creating what appears to be extroverted behavior but is actually the unveiling of hidden dimensions. The anonymity and projection dynamics of the internet further amplify this effect. Online environments often lack the strict social surveillance that exists in physical communities. An introvert posting on social media is not constantly monitored by colleagues, family members, or neighbors who hold fixed perceptions of who they are. This freedom from familiar judgment allows the persona to evolve without resistance. Moreover, the nature of digital communication encourages projection. Audiences online see only the curated version of a person, the carefully selected posts, photos, and comments. This curated self is then reflected back through likes, shares, and positive feedback, reinforcing the new persona. Jung would identify this as a form of self-inflation, a psychological process where the ego becomes overly identified with a particular image because that image is consistently validated by external responses. In the digital realm, introverts can experience this inflation without the grounding reality checks that occur in face-to-face relationships. There is also what we might call a social alibi at work. Introverts feel comfortable performing online because there is a psychological distance between themselves and their audience. They do not have to fully commit their identity to the performance. If something goes wrong, if a joke falls flat, or an opinion is criticized, the consequences feel less personal. There is no immediate confrontation, no need to defend oneself in the moment. Jung described this as persona over-identification, where an individual becomes so comfortable in a particular role that they lose touch with the deeper self beneath it. For introverts, the online persona can become a comfortable refuge, a place where they can express aspects of themselves without the vulnerability that comes with in-person intimacy. The digital environment also activates certain Jungian archetypes that may lie dormant in introverts during offline interactions. Archetypes are universal patterns of behavior and personality that exist within the collective unconscious. Online, several archetypes tend to emerge strongly for introverts. The jester archetype appears in the form of humor, meme creation, and playful engagement with trends. The sage archetype manifests when introverts share knowledge, offer thoughtful commentary, or guide discussions with insight. The rebel archetype comes forward when they express bold or contrarian opinions that they would hesitate to voice in person. The creator archetype is evident in those who produce content, write blogs, edit videos, or craft narratives that resonate with audiences. These archetypes are nurtured and reinforced by the rapid feedback loops of social media. Likes, comments, shares, and views provide immediate validation. encouraging introverts to continue embodying these roles. What appears as extroversion is actually the activation of archetypal energies that were always present but lacked the right conditions to emerge. However, there is a risk inherent in this dynamic, what Jung would call persona inflation. When the online persona becomes too strong, too separated from the offline self, psychological tension arises. The individual begins to feel as though they are living two separate lives. They may experience anxiety when meeting people in person who know them primarily through their online presence, fearing that the offline self will disappoint or contradict expectations. This split can lead to what some scholars call digital dissociation, a fracturing of identity where the person no longer feels integrated across contexts. Introverts are particularly vulnerable to this because they rely heavily on their internal world for coherence. When the external persona online becomes vastly different from the internal experience, it creates a dissonance that can be deeply unsettling. Jung's solution to this dilemma is not to abandon the online persona, but to work toward integration. Integration, or what Jung called individuation, is the process of bringing together the different parts of the psyche into a unified whole. For introverts navigating the digital world, this means recognizing that their online self is not fake, but it is also not the totality of who they are. It is one facet, one expression of the larger self. The goal is not to suppress the shadow or abandon the expanded persona online. Rather, it is to find ways to honor both the inner and outer dimensions, to bring the confidence, humor, and boldness that emerge online into real life, even if only in small doses. This might mean speaking up in a meeting when you would normally stay silent, or sharing a joke with friends in person that you would have only posted online. It means acknowledging that the person you are online is part of you, and that part deserves space in the physical world as well. Individuation is about becoming whole, not about choosing one version of yourself over another. In conclusion, introverts are not pretending to be extroverts when they come alive online. They are activating suppressed or underdeveloped aspects of their personality in an environment that reduces the social costs and increases the psychological safety. From a Jungian perspective, the online self is a legitimate psychological experiment, a space where the persona can expand, the shadow can emerge, and dormant archetypes can be explored. When approached with awareness and intention, this digital dimension can contribute to personal growth and self-understanding. It can help introverts discover strengths they did not know they had, and it can serve as a bridge toward greater integration. But if this online identity becomes inflated, if it drifts too far from the grounded self, it risks creating confusion and fragmentation. The challenge, then, is not to choose between the introvert offline and the extrovert online, but to weave these threads together into a coherent narrative, to recognize that both are real, both are valid, and both are parts of a larger, evolving self. The digital world is not a mask hiding the true person. It is a mirror reflecting dimensions that have always been there, waiting for the right conditions to shine. We hope this journey has offered you new ways to view the world with more nuance and clarity. If the ideas here spoke to you, please consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who may feel confined by a label, and subscribing to The Well for more meaningful explorations into the human psyche. Thank you for tuning in with us today. See you in the next one.